For far too long, the effective management of the customer's experience has been considered a soft skill. But today, successful companies recognize that the customer experience is king, or from my perspective, is queen. Welcome to CX Unplugged. I'm Gabrielle Gonzalez, your host, and in this series, you will hear from me and other industry experts about how prioritizing the customer experience led to amazing outcomes. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to CX Unplugged, where we talk about missteps and masterful manifestations in the world of multifamily management. In today's episode, we're going to hear from an industry trailblazer and veteran, Jennifer Nevitt. We will examine how her focus on the employee as customer has led to success. And I personally was first influenced by Jennifer Nevitt in the infancy of my career. I was drawn to her confidence in a room of tenured industry experts who at that time were mostly men. She taught me some very valuable lessons that have since been passed down to the next generation of female leaders. So I am honored and very excited to have her on my podcast today. So let me introduce you. Jennifer Nevitt is a founding partner and chief executive officer of Canto Asset Growth Fund and 42 LLC, a boutique apartment property management company and consulting company based in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Since 1993, she has developed return on investment strategies for multifamily investments, real estate investment portfolios with a capitalized value exceeding $11 billion in her 42-year career. Ms. Nevitt was also the former CEO, inventor, and founder of YieldStar Technology, LLC, a yield management B2B software application that optimized revenue for the multifamily real estate industry, whose assets were acquired by RealPage. Over the years, Jennifer has spoken for the Urban Land Institute, the National Apartment Association, the National Association of Home Builders, and is a published author in other industry publications. So welcome, Jennifer, to CX Unplugged.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here, Gabrielle. Thank you.
I am so glad to have you here too. It's really, as I said before, it's really an honor, and I'm really excited for you to be able to share some of your wisdom that has impacted me in such a meaningful way over the years, and share that with our viewers and our listeners out there. I'm curious to learn about your memories of our earliest meetings. Your impact on me has really been profound over the years, and I appreciate so much of it. But I'm curious to learn, I don't know, what your memories are of our earliest meetings.
I know that early on, I had just left the Gene Glick company and I was going to go be an industry consultant. And as I transitioned, all of a sudden I heard from Brad Chambers at Buckingham, and he said, I've got an office space and I've got a laptop, or excuse me, at that time it was a desktop. And I'd love you to meet my up and coming marketing director. And so with enthusiasm, you walk in the hallway, you walk right into the office and you go, I'm Gabrielle. And at that point, Evans, I realize you have been since married. But as you stood in front of me, you said, I cannot wait to learn everything that you know. And Brad Chambers speaks so highly of you. And you immediately had a notepad in your hand and an ink pen. And at that moment in time, I could tell you were ready for me to just start to try to impart wisdom. And I'm sitting here like, I was just leaving for lunch, but your enthusiasm was so profound in the genuine sense that you really wanted to learn. I'll never forget that moment. I can actually, don't laugh, but I can even tell you what we had on that day.
You can? Well, first of all, that's amazing that you could even remember that. And yeah, if I'm guessing, I was probably wearing a suit from Ganto's. I think I had a really bright pink suit that I used to wear.
You are correct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad that I came off with such enthusiasm, and that you remember that. That means a lot. So I'm curious. So to learn, maybe some of, as I said, you gave me some of the best advice that I have received in my career at a really pivotal time for me too. And I'm curious to know maybe if you'd be willing to share with us what's some of the best advice you were given early in your career that sort of stayed with you and helped to kind of helped you develop into the amazing professional that you are.
Thank you so much. I really believe early on, if everybody puts in perspective, I started in the industry in 1982. And in 1982, it was 99.9% driven by men, terrific individuals who were great leaders. And as I looked around the room, I knew I wanted to inspire the next generation and I wanted to become that next generation. And as I went through various leaders, I really made certain that I aligned in a resonating energy, though they were, again, mostly men, but they wanted to see young women up and coming. They wanted to have results, individuals, and that talent they wanted to reward. They weren't going to be petty, they weren't going to dismiss us. And one of my very early examples of that is I worked really, really hard at J&B, which is now Heitman Trust out of Chicago. I wanted to become the leasing professional of the year and win an award. And I can remember Phil Neri at the time. And again, if you go back to those, very, very young eras, when I would say, I'm looking for a promotion, I'd like to be the property manager, I want to be a corporate trainer. Often a lot of those individuals would state to me, here's the 3 things you need to do next in your career. These things are going to matter. And again, very fortunate that my parents really instilled this, but they would always say, did you have any more questions? Because I was always in a hurry and rush, rush, rush. And I would always say, if there's one thing you see in me that I should evolve and improve and I should refine, and asking that next generation ahead of me, what and how are you experiencing me and where can I improve? I would tell you that there were some early individuals, Roger Greer, Phil Neri, Frank Basile at the Glick Company, Gene Glick himself, who were always willing to give me the time to say, here's some feedback. This is where I encourage you to grow. And a lot of individuals in their career, when you're asking those in great leadership positions, where should I refine? Where should I improve? Then write it down and create the plan of what you're going to go do to try to achieve that. And the one thing I do want to caution is not everyone is going to say things you agree with. And sometimes you're going to become defensive. And, one thing, Gabrielle, about you that was a great strength in yours is you wouldn't necessarily become defensive. You would discern through and say, well, I somewhat agree with this. I don't agree with that. But you would take the nugget, the one part that you could relate to, and then that's where you would grow. And then additional conversations would continue. But I would have to say that I found individuals who were willing to invest in me, and I knew that their hearts were genuine and that they wanted me to succeed and they weren't being critical and they weren't trying to set me up to fail.
Yeah, that is a great talk about a nugget. That's a great nugget. And I think, that really says a lot too about your energy and willingness and enthusiasm and willingness to, seek out those opportunities to grow. How can I grow? How can I get better? And recognizing I am where I am now, but like, I know I'm not, I know enough to know I don't know. I remember being in one of my very first jobs, being an assistant manager. That was my very first job. And I always used to think, oh, that manager, she just sits around and talks to people all day and, just has fun, goes out to lunch. And I could do that job, and the second that I got that job, eventually, I remember going, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I look back 6 months. Geez, 6 months ago, I had no idea of actually what's going on. But now I've got it, and I think I continued the process for a few years to come, thinking, oh, now I've got it all figured out and realizing with time, no, I didn't have it figured out. There's always something more to learn. So maybe we should seek out the people who are, emulate those who are successful. That was one I always got. That was Lee Iacocca, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so thank you for that. And sounds like you were very lucky also to have those people willing to make that investment.
Very, very, very lucky, very fortunate. Even Maureen Bartell in Houston, Texas in 1983, I said, I want to be a corporate trainer. She's like, Jennifer, you don't have a degree. You don't have any college education. You have 2 years in kindergarten, elementary education. And I said, I know, Maureen, but I want to be a corporate trainer. And to know I could trust her with the vulnerability of saying, here's who I'm not, and here's what I don't have. And she looked me in the eye and she said, all right, let me put you on that program. Let me put you on that career track. And she did.
Yay for her. Yay for those gals and other women out there that are there, that we can trust, that help all of us rise up. That's so
Absolutely.
important. Yeah. So during I think what kind of one of the things too that really piqued my interest in seeing a real alignment between this podcast, what I'm doing now with this, and what you have been doing was during some of our recent work together. I shared with you how impressed I was with the comprehensive level of support that your company provides employees at your new construction assets. I was really, really in admiration of that level of comprehensive support, because not all I've worked with a variety of companies, and not all companies really provide that level of support. So it was so refreshing, and I guess it shouldn't have been surprising, but at the same time, I really admired how, your foresight to be able to see how important that structure is to really drive asset performance and success on the front end. So, I guess I'm really curious, is there anything that you can share with us about why you feel that comprehensive support aspect in terms of the customer experience you're providing to your employees, right, as a customer, is so critical to success?
It's an excellent question. And again, in life, we're all imperfect, but we do try to see where we need to go. In my early career, I was fortunate, and I say fortunate, but I had two types of leaders. I had one leader that was, well, Jennifer, you're just the leasing professional, and I'm not going to invest any time, energy, or care in you because I'm really interested in these other individuals who have superior, more management and executive positions. And that detachment and that minimizing the human soul of what that individual could provide. And then I was fortunate to have a leader who said, wow, you're going to help us make a difference. And here's where we need to invest in what you need to know. And here's what that looks like. And the amount of absolute completeness I felt, even though I was inferior in all my skills, and even though I wasn't a top performer at that early point, is I really flourished under the role where the leader set me down and invested in my, Jennifer as a person. And she was really able to convey that you're going to make a difference, and let me help you understand how. And so very early on, I then had another individual as a leader, and very dismissive. And I don't care if you've been traveling and training for 3 straight weeks, you better be here on time in the morning at 8 a.m., even though you got in at 2 a.m. And he was very, very militant. And again, after 3 weeks straight of training, you've been a corporate trainer. I mean, you're like, oh my goodness, I am so exhausted. But I will tell you what makes the difference in how you care is every person under the tutelage of your leadership has their own life journey. And I don't really consider team members as employees. I believe that they're here with us for a period of time. I believe in their own world and their life journey, just like your life journey. Each of us are here to make a difference. And when you can give that individual the benefit of the doubt in their human experience, and then you invest in what they can do to make a difference, when they go home at night, they're like, wow, I made a difference. And this is what mattered. And I just really believe that means that senior leaders have to mentor and invest in the frontline team. And a lot of times that frontline team feels a lot of vulnerability. Right now we're speaking, it's August 2024. And I state that because the world is very different. The markets have changed dramatically. I've done this, as you said, 42 years, but I can tell you there's been a change in 5 months that I have never seen in 4 decades. And so when you have all of these other individuals, we all lived through COVID, which was amazing, and we're here to tell the tale. But now we have the impact of how we are all now going through a true dichotomy. And so if you don't have frontline involvement, if you don't have the situations that continue to come forward, you don't have somebody on the front line that says, hey, let me raise my hand. Things aren't going as planned. And then that plan has to change. Well, that frontline person needs to know that even though things aren't going to that plan, that someone's there that cares enough to try to figure it out. And then that's a diagnostic process. And you raise, well, it's very unique in how you do things. I believe the playbook that you wrote or I wrote yesterday, that can go in the trash can, because today is a different day. And diagnostically, you've got to look at all the conditions, the capital markets, world crisis in the world, what the individual's going through in their family life and where they are in their journey. So I do truly, truly believe that we're in just different times, and the ability to change is very difficult for some people.
Yeah, wow. I think, God, you said so many really important nuggets in there. One of them that stood out to me was about the two types of leaders, right? And I think a lot of us who've been in the industry for a long time can probably relate with both of those leadership approaches. And sort of how we grew or developed or didn't under those leadership. I can even think, I hate to say it, when I reflect back on my leadership, I think I've been both of those leaders, as well. And
Absolutely. I know I have. And that's what we all have to remember. There's imperfection in all of us at a moment in time.
mhm, yeah, yeah. And it's funny, I think I learned a lot myself from both of those leaders, but I felt better about the growth, right? With the ones
Mhm.
that cared about, me specifically, or weren't so militant, if you will. But yeah, so that was such a good point. Um and I also love how you know talk about, your frontline team. I mean, one of the things that I talk about in my podcast, and just in general, that I'll often contemplating or pontificating on, is this notion of who is the customer, right? Like you said, back in when you started, or when I started, the customer was your end user, and that's pretty much all we thought of, as the customer's the end user, the customer's the resident, basically.
Mhm.
uh, and I think even back then, for those of you who are young and listening, right, we even had a s- oh, what do we call that? Like a anecdote that the customer is always right. And that put a lot of pressure, right, on your frontline team, because sometimes, I think we know now, sometimes the customer just isn't right.
Absolutely, they're not correct. And you need to have your teams back. And you need to know when that customer needs to transition into another world and it's not the world of that team.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yes, yes. I think that's one of the biggest like evolutions. And I think that's one of the things too that I think is, again, companies that are thriving today, I think, recognize and see that. And, like you were talking about, the playbook that we have from yesterday, it was great and probably really well thought out, and probably has a lot of really important, things to reference points. But today is a new day. That's what we know is going to change. Everything is going to change. And while we still may have some great reference points there, the plan still may need to change. So we've got to be nimble enough to do that, and recognize that we've got to support those frontline customers of ours as executive leaders to feel empowered and help them overcome that vulnerability that they're most naturally feeling.
And I think nimble's the correct word, Gabrielle. That's actually a perfect world. Is under fear and duress and stress, most humans is their response is to tighten in and become more controlling when in fact it's just to be nimble and to see a bigger picture and to breathe, just breathe.
So true. So true. I can relate with that. Um, okay, so let's moving on. Here's another one of the concepts that I attribute to you is the notion that front line equals the bottom line. Recall you saying this and meaning that. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you and maybe how it's driven some of your professional evolution?
Yes, when I was at Glick, I was writing a curriculum, and I really wanted to impress on the team that the front line is exactly where the financial statements would come out. And those that were weaker teams or they needed training or it wasn't just a great fit, the frontline person that was there, maybe there was an individual that would stir trouble and would not work. Maybe they had a narcissistic approach and undermining and malicious. And when that team member could transition out, then the front line would improve because the front line and that continuity does equal the bottom line. But when I started in the great crisis of 2008, the capital markets crisis, Lehman blowing up on September, if you go back through the whole world of everything we lived and the markets were crashing, part of the consulting practice at the time was all of these workouts, joint venture partners, banks, and the banking community was a great client of mine. And it was wonderful relative to I had clients because they needed assistance. But it was a very sad time because when we would go to work out a property from the lender's perspective or the joint venture partner's perspective and the equity, and we would go through all the diagnostic analytics and what was really happening and should the keys go back to the bank on this property or that property. It was really fundamental that the frontline teams that had individuals that cared, that were very well trained, that understood the mission, and they were supported. Those properties were actually ones that, as an advisor to these large institutions, I would state, don't take those keys. Go back to that joint venture partner, create a workout plan. They've got a great team. And that frontline team, if they do X, Y, and Z, I believe you can, again, creating a new debt structure, creating a new capital structure often, but that frontline team is going to make it happen. I also did diagnostic work on workouts where the frontline team was coming in at 9:30 with hair rollers in, and they were eating their breakfast at their desk, and they kind of looked at me and rolled their eyes like, well, why are you here? And I'm like, well, you have 89 vacant apartments, that didn't make the mortgage payment yesterday. And so truly going through these workouts and how it was very, very stressful. 2009 and 2010, in my entire career, we would get literally shelves of 67 assets for a day to review. We had over 3,000 assets that were in workout that we were analyzing. And when, you found the few that you knew to save, it was often the frontline team that was going to get it done. Yes, the capital structure had to be recreated. It had to be set into motion. But really, those frontline teams that were smart and they were committed and they were loyal and they had a great attitude. And then there were other properties that I would visit and the care was not there to do the right thing. And I knew that even if the bank restructured the debt and restructured the capital, unless they terminated that management company and the managing agent and they cleaned house, they still weren't going to get the job done. And that property was still going to really suffer financially.
That is really a testament to that frontline team. Yeah, I mean that just perfectly defines that the front line equals the bottom line. And it's interesting, that you're able to see that. But I can totally relate. And it's interesting how you point out that, again, those employees, those frontline folks, again, who are essentially at that stage, from that perspective, those employees are the customer, right, of,
Absolutely.
the bank, the owners, everyone. They need to treat these employees as a customer, give them the tools they need, give them the compassion, the ear, the playbooks, whatever the case may be, the understanding, to do what they need to do, to manage this asset out of, a receivership or a failing situation. So, I love that. I love that perspective. I feel like that really encapsulates the whole thing. Everything that we're talking about today is in terms of the customer being, a full spectrum of folks. And in this case, the employees, and how focusing on those folks can really drive what everybody is here to do in our industry, right? So.
And Gabrielle, I want to coattail, and this is an important nugget that I hope all of your viewers that are very early in their career in property management, a phrase that I embrace and live is debt drives the deal. Whatever the capital structure, for those of you who have a mortgage payment, you got a loan with the bank. When I say debt, I just mean the loan with the bank. So debt drives the deal. Did you get an interest rate that was an 18% interest rate, like way back in 1986 in Texas? Or do you get, a great interest rate at a 4.5? So the interest rate, debt drives the deal. But beyond debt driving the deal, I really want all of your viewers to understand that is only one component. That front line is the bottom line. And when they are inspired to achieve greatness in those results, that's going to drive the financial results of that transaction.
I love it. Thank you very much for that. I feel like that really, that sort of sums it all up. That's that one great, there's lots of great takeaways, but that's that one big takeaway for everybody to really get from this. And I really, really, Jen, really appreciate you taking the time. I know that your schedule is hugely busy, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers will appreciate as well, the time you have taken to join us today on CX Unplugged. But hopefully I can plug in to some of the successes that you are engaged in the future, and maybe you can join us again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me today. I've really appreciated, and to all of you, I just wish you an amazing, wonderful, abundant life. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for joining us today on CX Unplugged. I hope you will tune in for our next episode, sponsored by the Multifamily Media Network. Until next time. CX Unplugged, where we have redefined who your customer really is. Join me next time to hear more missteps and masterful manifestations in the world of multifamily customer experience. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network.